this. And I get a little bit closer, and I said, no, that's some dummy in a Bigfoot suit, and that's a good way to get shot by somebody like me. And about that time, I was probably between 25 to 35 yards from it, and it either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me and froze me right where I stood. And I was trying in my head to figure out whether it was a guy in a Bigfoot suit or a real Bigfoot. And I mean, 2 years before Andre the Giant died, I ran into him in Abilene, Texas, coming out of the kettle. So I've met Andre the Giant before, and he was 7'6". He was a big guy, and whatever this was made him look like a little guy. So they don't make people that big, and I could see the muscles underneath its fur flexing and working. I could see, any time it breathed, I could see underneath its fur moving. So I knew deadgum well it wasn't somebody in a suit. That was something real. That was a real creature. And we probably stared at each other for what seemed like forever to me, but it was probably about 10-15 seconds, and I didn't move. I was frozen. So it stomped the ground and did a grunt growl like, "Urgh." And when it did that, I bet you I jumped about a foot in the air, but I stayed frozen in fright and fear. And when it did that, from the distance it was away, the only way I can describe this is like a lion. When it roars, you can feel it reverberate in your body, in your chest, and that's what it did. And it kept me frozen in fright, and I didn't move, so it just turned around and walked away from me and literally stepped over a barbed wire fence, just pushed it down a little bit with its hand and looked back over its shoulder at me, kind of like the Patty did in the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And then it walked across a field, and halfway across the field it looked back again at me. And when it got to the other side, there was another barbed wire fence, but there was trees going across that one, and it stepped over that barbed wire fence between a couple of trees that was maybe 5 or 6 inches in diameter. And when it reached up to use that as a brace, kind of like a human would, but instead of grabbing it like a human would with its thumb upwards, it didn't wrap its thumb around the tree like a monkey. It reached up and had the thumb pointing down, and with all of its fingers, thumb and all, it grabbed the tree, looked back at me, and stepped into the woods. And it was like it disappeared, like it was magic. It just vanished, and I didn't smell it no more, nothing.
Yeah, that's terrifying, man. That's terrifying to be that close with something so big. And what did you think, before we talk about, descriptions and everything, what did you think about the whole topic of Sasquatch prior to this?
I was on the fence about it. As a kid, I seen the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and that was pretty compelling to me, because when you watch that, I mean, you can see the shoulder blades moving and the muscles and stuff. So in my head, they existed, but I had never seen one before that day. And that was the turning point. I am no longer a believer. I am a knower of Bigfoot.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, if you would, for the audience listening, can you kind of describe, when he turned and looked at you, can you kind of describe for the audience what you saw?
Oh, yeah, we stood and looked at each other without any woods or anything in between us for at least 15 seconds. I can tell you exactly what he looks like. Their face, I want to say the Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot is close, but it's not exact. Their face isn't as monkey looking as Harry's face. They look more Neanderthal. It had a beard like a man. It had a mustache, but what it didn't have was a round head. It had a cone-shaped head like a gorilla's, and its shoulder muscles that connect to the bottom of our neck doesn't connect to the bottom of their neck. It connects to the back of their skulls like a gorilla, so it makes it look like it don't have a neck. And this thing was jacked like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, you could see the muscles underneath and the sheer body mass of this thing. I mean, I'm a 5'8", 5'9" guy, and I weigh about 155 to 165 pounds, and I mean, this thing's legs were as big as my torso or bigger. I mean, this thing was huge. It was, I work commercial construction too, so it was at least between 9 and 12 feet tall, somewhere in there. I mean, it was a big guy. And yes, it was a guy. I could see its genitals through the fur. When it walked away, I could see its muscles moving. I could literally see when it stepped and walked. I could see the mid-tarsal break in its foot, halfway up its foot. It like your toes bend when you step. Its foot in the middle of its foot bends.
Did the expression on the face change? Obviously, when it grunted, but as you were looking...
Oh yeah, you could tell that it was startled at first when it looked at me, but it tried to present itself as it wasn't afraid, and it scowled at me a little bit, and I didn't move. So it stomped the ground and growled at me, and when it did, I mean, it had an evil look on its face when it did. I almost bolted, but I figured, like an animal, it might make it chase you, you know. So I didn't. I just stayed frozen. Its color was a reddish brown, like an orangutan on its back, and on its shoulders it was a little bit darker, like a blackish color. Its arms are long, and they go to like their knees, man. Their arms are long.